Welcome back, Mighty Cougars of English 245B. We are here today to talk about Notes from Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I'm here with our fabulous embedded tutor,
Hello.
Hannah Emmack.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
And we have a few guiding questions for Section 1 particularly, and we're going to talk a little bit about Section 2 as well. For our guiding questions for Section 1 are going to be, what exactly is hyperconsciousness? Why is it a sickness? What are positives about hyperconsciousness and what are negatives about hyperconsciousness? We're going to take this to ultimately to the question of free will versus determinism, and also what we do with our time and how we can see this very clearly in, say, our use of social media like Instagram or Facebook or any of those types of TikTok, any of those types of platforms, and where we are now.
That's true. All right. So, I mean, first off, how would you necessarily define hyperconsciousness?
Hyperconsciousness is noticing things that other people don't notice. And I'm talking about structural things that are underneath society. For instance, one person may look at a casino in Nevada and say, oh, wow, this is so much fun. Mm-hmm. You can gamble in there and you can drink and you can go to shows and things. And then the hyperconscious person would probably look at the casino and go, oh, look at the waste in there. Look at everything is based on some sort of addiction or the appetites, right?
Yeah, they consider the underbelly of any supposition, right? It's maybe considering all the different possibilities, being kind of hyper aware, being very aware of the plausible outcomes that could result from any one decision. It might not just be positive, there can be different ways of interpreting any given situation. The underground man particularly spends a lot of his time overthinking, and that's maybe one of the manifestations of hyperconsciousness that we would want to think about. It's pretty relatable to a lot of people because I do think we tend to get stuck in overthought. He describes it on page 7 as being, sinking into the mire, going deeper and deeper and getting completely stuck and not being able to make a decision. He often finds that his hyperconsciousness leads him to a wall. He gets stuck at a wall, right?
Yes, and at the wall, the hyperconscious person stops, right? And they think about it. Whereas the man of action, which I think the underground man would characterize as the normal person, would somehow find a way through the wall or over the wall or around the wall or just disregard the wall. And this is another important thing about hyperconsciousness. It's not the situation at hand necessarily, but the implications of the situation.
Yeah.
Right? And that can be a lot of things.
Because you take it so far in your calculation. You start planning so far in advance beyond the point of reasonable data to even... You don't have that knowledge yet. The underground man on page 10 and 11, he's discussing the distinction between the man and the mouse, which is the overthinker, the one who does not... who actually calculates and thinks about the wall and maybe considers that it's not actually an end stop and he doesn't have to, but he ends up going back into his hole and choosing the option of no choice, which is worse in many ways than the man of action who, like you said, will either break through the wall or just find a different solution altogether. And he doesn't waste his time as much in worrying about the futility of the wall.
Right, and at the bottom of page 11, we have this quote from the underground man. And he's talking about the mouse here, right? Of course, nothing remains for it but to wave the whole thing aside with his little paw, and with a smile of feigned contempt in which it does not believe itself, slip back shamefacedly into its crack. There in its loathsome, stinking underground, our offended, beaten down, and derided mouse at once immerses itself in cold, venomous, and above all, everlasting spite. And spite is very important to the underground man. And spite is sort of like doing things just to do them, just because
like sticking it to the man, kind of. If you're being told you must, or you shall, or this is what's good for you, the underground man or the spiteful creature is just going to say, "Screw you! You're not the arbiter of my actions. Or you don't get to decide."
Right, and usually with spite, it's almost like there's a measure of cruelty that goes along with it. It's something like it's like a big fu to the universe. Basically, it's just kind of like even when it doesn't make sense, right? To do something. In fact, especially when it doesn't make sense, that's when we rebel in a spiteful manner. So hyperconsciousness, overthinking. It is paralyzing because of the overthinking, and it tends to separate the person who has it really badly from the rest of society.
Yeah. These are the negative aspects to hyperconsciousness, of course, because it's not being combined with the actionable nature of choice. When the underground man reverts, he is choosing to kind of be subsumed by the spite instead of, opposing it in some way. But he also is asking too, really interesting in Underground in part 1, he's asking, if we were to calculate all of our actions, what would this do for society? Because, maybe you can talk about the implications of that, like the Industrial Revolution, or wanting to think about being so empirical with people's choices to produce ideal outcomes, and how people actually react to this in their actual lives.
Right. So with the Industrial Revolution, if you think about this, societies, particularly Russia, massive society, and organized under feudalism, where it's and you see that there are still sort of these military ranks and hierarchy even within the civil service, which the underground man works in. And then suddenly the Industrial Revolution comes along, and even in countries that were still regencies or monarchies like Russia, you need bureaucracy to deal with the new, even there, capitalism is burgeoning. And you need bureaucracy to come in and take these things. And suddenly the human becomes smaller. And also, you don't really know your place as well. In feudalism, if your father was a cobbler, you're going to be a cobbler. You don't think I think I'm going to marry the princess someday. I mean, that's the stuff of fairy tales, right? But there was everybody knew their place. The king was at the top. It was really modeled on the idea of heaven, God, and everybody, kind of coming down, angels, principalities, down to the lowliest human, right? And now things are changing. We need people to work at desks. We need people to spend all day filling out forms. And this is before, we think it's bad doing it with computers now and these kinds of things. Imagine doing it with pen and paper, and literally when you had to make copies, you would have to get together with another person, and that's how you would make a copy, is that the person would copy whatever you had. I mean, it's almost medieval, right?
Yeah.
But this is a changing time. Okay, and I've kind of got away from your question, I think.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But I mean, there was a goal to that too in making all of these, in making bureaucracy and giving people that ability to have. It's like now you have all these choices. For one, all the choices paralyze the underground man. So we're not saying that choice is bad in society, but certainly not. Although it's kind of like recalling Nietzsche even. Think of the systematizer, on page 23, the underground man is critiquing the man of action and saying that man is so partial to systems and abstract conclusions that he's ready to intentionally distort the truth, to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear, only so as to justify his logic. He's saying about this, the man of action, this is something the man of action does wrong, but really it seems that the underground man does this much the same. He justifies his logic with a lot of, you all see it. But anyway, he asks, I asked the Industrial Revolution question because what the underground man is really questioning too is if we determine all of our actions in a society, if we calculate the most profitable choices for citizens to make, what are they going to do with this utopia? Can it be a utopia? Can systems in society be so perfected that it's actually happy for people and they can be content? And if we were to find this, is what the Underground Man is asking, if we were to find this utopia, what would people do with it?
Right.
How would they take it?
Right. And this was around the time, and he does mention the Crystal Palace in a few places in here, and that was kind of presented as the epitome of human achievement and a symbol for utopia. And one of the things out of the Industrial Revolution, which has been a two-edged sword, is, with all these conveniences, machines and such that we get, I mean, even think washing machines and things like that we are going to have more free time. George Bernard Shaw predicted that by our time, in fact, earlier than our time, humans would be working like 2 days a week because we would have so much. But what do people, Hannah asks a really good question. If humans are left to their own desires, and they have freedom, what are they going to do with that freedom? And ultimately, the Underground Man's diatribe comes down to kind of a strange split between free will and determinism. And maybe we could talk about those two terms just a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Determinism, if you guys are familiar, it's a philosophical theory of choice and action. So determinism claims that all human actions it's a causal chain. Every action is determined by those preceding it, just going infinitely back to all actions from the past and future are to be determined in a sequence. There is no other option because they are products and results of the forthcoming questions and choices, right? So people, if choice is being looked at deterministically, they think they have the option to choose otherwise. Like Thomas Nagel is a philosopher who argues about determinism, right? Maybe he doesn't make a claim on it, but he's saying, for example, can they eat the piece of cake? Could I choose not to eat a piece of chocolate cake? Well, if you look at how your life had been set up previous to that and what your day had been like, and really, would you in that moment have any option other than eating that chocolate cake? And you'd think, yeah, I could just choose to eat the apple instead. But he's pretty much arguing that under determinism, no, you wouldn't, because it wouldn't make logical sense for you to choose to eat the apple. Everything is in favor of you eating the cake. So it's determined, it's decided already that you would eat the cake. Free will is maybe the opposite, is that you do have the choice to eat the cake. There's an opportunity to go otherwise. It is not all rooted and mapped, and it cannot be systematized in the same way, routinized to a T. You still have multiple diverging possibilities.
Right. And when we're talking about determinism, and the Underground Man gets into this too, this is a major split historically, philosophically, theologically, where we have this idea that what separates humans from animals is free will, versus animals typically are deterministic. They work on instincts. So if a dog is put into a certain situation, 99 times out of 100, it will do, you put it in a room with raw meat, it's going to eat the raw meat, yeah. Right? It's just going to do it because that's what it's programmed to do. It's going to chase cats, right? It's going to do all those things that dogs do. And yes, we can train animals and those kinds of things, but we have the idea of them turning, they go back to their instincts. And this is true of, the lower the animal, the more deterministic it is, really. I mean, the sort of the less brain power it has. Whereas humans, we tell ourselves that we have the choice to eat the raw meat or not eat the raw meat, that we can think about why we're even in the room and try to get out of the room, try to change our circumstances, where animals really react. And this is one of the things that, if you think about the time of the underground man, mid 1800s, 19th century, we're facing things, all sorts of things, like we've already been told that we're not the center of the universe by Copernicus a long time ago. And then Darwin comes along, and his implications are that we're basically animals, and science is, and the underground man talks about us being devalued into animals. And then Freud is going to come along and tell us that we're, just like the underground man says, we are sick animals. We're not just animals, right? We're sick animals.
Yeah. Okay. Back to this idea too, sick animals. So how is the underground man sick? Well, he's very hyper-conscious, and also he claims to be motivated by spite. He also thinks that these animals that are people, he claims, will do so much action just to oppose the fact that they are actually an animal. He calls this the piano key or the organ sprig. This is on page 30 and 31, though it's mentioned sooner. You'll note that he comments on people in their dedication to proving that they are not piano keys. That even though they are being shown through math, through science, that they should come out to these certain reasons and these certain, results, he will subvert those expectations just because he can. And the underground man says that he'll find means on page 31. If he finds himself without any means, he will invent destruction and chaos, and he'll invent all kinds of suffering and still have his own way. That's what the underground man says people will do with boredom. Because on the page prior, he's saying, even if you were to shower him with all earthly blessings, drown him in happiness completely, over his head, so that only bubbles pop up on the surface of happiness as on water, give him such economic satisfaction that he will no longer have anything left to do except sleep, eat gingerbread, and worry about the non-cessation of the world history. And here it is, it's just it's ingratitude. He's saying that out of this utopia state, this full comfortability, they'll get really bored. People will get bored and invent chaos. And they will destroy those systems, even though they thought that they'd be creating systems so that they can reach contentment. It's kind of a self-defeating prophecy. But at the same time, that leads us to the question, is the underground man arguing for free will or against free will? Is the novel implicitly arguing for free will or determinism? What do you think?
Well, and going with that, too, is... the underground man, I already told you, on page 25, he talks about how science will basically reduce us to animals, right? Because everything can be calculated, everything can be known about just like an animal, you can study, you can predict, and eventually prove that we're like animals. But Hannah, you just mentioned the whole, that the ingratitude.
Yeah.
And the underground man seems to hold that out as almost a human value. Like he says, if he had to define what a human being is, and I still like the Constance Garnett phrase, she says, biped, ungrateful, right? So, okay, we're animals, but we can be ungrateful. Whereas take your average house cat or dog. Maybe some people think that cats are ungrateful, but
right.
But that is a human trait. Or something we can choose.
Yeah.
You could give a human everything, just like Hannah, just like you were just saying, right? You were just saying all that happiness that bubbles up, all the comforts, all the goodness, and what do? Turn around and reject it all? Mm-hmm. Chaos and destruction, just because you can, and maybe you're bored.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fear coming from science during this time period, right? That science is new, science is going to solve everything. That we've seen several breakthroughs right around this time period in not only physical sciences but in social sciences, and what we're getting. I'm just going to read. It's kind of a large quote on page 24, but really. He's getting into what he talks about logarithms, and really what we're dealing with now in our society is algorithms, right? Everything is calculated about what we're going to do.
What we want to see.
Right. So here we go, about middle of the page on 24. But even so, you are perfectly confident that he will not fail to grow accustomed once one or two old bad habits have passed, and once common sense and science have thoroughly re-educated and given a normal direction to human nature. You are confident that man will then voluntarily cease making mistakes and willy-nilly, so to speak, refuse to set his will at variance with his normal interests. Moreover, then, you say, science itself will teach man, though this is really a luxury in my opinion, that in fact he has neither will nor caprice, and never did have any, and that he himself is nothing but a sort of piano key or sprig in an organ, and that furthermore, there also exist in the world the laws of nature, so that whatever he does is done not at all according to his own wanting, but of itself according to the laws of nature. Right, and so what he's really getting at there is nature negates or can negate, or they're telling us nature will negate free will. Everything will be discovered, really.
Is this determinism, would you say?
I think this is determinism. This is almost a form of fatalism, right?
Yeah.
That it's that this there's no way out of it. You're an animal, and if you're put in certain circumstances, there are a few variables of how a person will react, right, in those circumstances.
It's ironic because Underground Man seems to be arguing against this philosophy, and yet he does identify with the mouse. He identifies himself with an animal, and he does choose to revert into his hole throughout the entire novella. I mean, in this little section, he's talking about, this is his philosophy, but we see it in Apropos of the Wet Snow as well. And, I mean, it leads us to question, could he do otherwise? Is he just acting in accordance with his own nature? But then, really, I think the implied meaning here, or some implied question, would be, does this acquit responsibility and accountability? And how can the Underground Man take accountability for these actions? Because he's quite self-aware. But is self-awareness the same thing as accountability?
Yeah, and he does. And it's almost like, yeah, that point that you're making right now, it's really kind of funny. And it's his personality. So many times in Apropos of Wet Snow, like every time that story ramps up, first he meets him at the dinner party. Mm-hmm. First he goes to Simonov's apartment, and then he's like, he forces himself to go back, even though he knows he shouldn't. And then he invites himself to the dinner party, even though it's so clear that none of these people want him at the dinner party. And on top of this, even though he hates it in himself, he borrows money from Simonov, even though he already owes him money, right? And the best part is when they leave for the whorehouse, because he's like, there's no way I was going. I couldn't go, but I had to go.
He acquiesces every time. Yeah.
I had to go. It's like, even though he tries to talk himself out of all these things, it just seems like he's got to do it just to do it, because he knows it's wrong, mm-hmm. or that he knows that he shouldn't be doing it, or that he doesn't even have the money to afford to do it. Yeah. All those things.
So is he just justifying his weakness with his spite then?
It does seem, Hannah, that it's almost like now we say, so like say when you use a cliche now.
Yeah.
Somebody would say, like, can we think of a good cliche here? Like something like, what is something that everybody's using right now? Something that's, anyway, if we say, yes.
I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind for me, I don't know if this applies, but I always think of "it is what it is."
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yes, and I hate that. Oh my God, I hate that one.
Yeah.
But if you say, as the contemporary cliche goes, it is what it is. then you're drawing sort of this ironic knowledge that you're using a despised cliche.
It's fine if it's ironic, because clearly I don't mean it like that.
Yes.
But what's the action? The action's the same.
Yes, right. The action is the same.
There.
Yeah, exactly. But you're pointing out that, yes, I know that this is the lamest cliche in the world, but I'm still going to use it.
That's a great example.
And then that sort of settles your audience, or at least clears yourself in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the way the Underground Man operates. Now, I want to go with this. It's this real apprehension about science in here, right? And about how everything is being worked out.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about logarithms. I think for us, a more accurate term would be algorithms. And if you don't believe this, cougars out there in Cougarland, this is totally true. There are companies, like a company called Axiom. And Axiom has a file on every single person in the United States. And they have predicted what type of person you're going to marry, how much money you will ultimately make, how much success you will have in life, when you will die, how many kids you'll have, what sorts of... and they have everything down. And what is the purpose of all of this? It's to advertise to you. They sell it to advertisers. You are put in a category, and they have different names, like you can be a shooting star, or you can be a leveler, or you could be, different types of things like that. And that's a little bit of an outdated example. The more current example is things like, think about your feed on, say, Instagram or Facebook, which is algorithmically decided by what you view and what you view longer and what you interact with. Then you will get more of the same. I'm sure that all of you have noticed this out there, right? So are we making our own, buying into our own determinism? I mean, it's a question that we could ask.
I mean, there's certainly entities capitalizing off of our own determinism, maybe, or our inclination to scroll, our inclination to become participatory in a technological way instead of in the real interactive spheres, right? Like in personal life.
Sure.
But I
and the Underground Man is sort of mocking. Ultimately, he's sort of mocking, like, the idea that science is going to solve all our problems. Science will make everything clear. We won't have to make choices anymore, and because we'll know what we're like and what we have to do, and we'll all be happy all of a sudden. And I'm going to go just a little bit after that passage that Hannah read on page 30 to page 31, where he talks about the middle of the page. He says, and more than that, even if it should indeed turn out that he is a piano key, if it were even proved to him mathematically and by natural science, there's your algorithms and logarithms, he would still not come to reason, but would do something contrary on purpose solely out of ingratitude alone, essentially to have his own way. And if he finds himself without means, he will invent destruction and chaos. He will invent all kinds of suffering and still have his own way. And that's really what it comes down to. And you can go all the way back to the ancient Greeks to find that consciousness itself, or awareness, or a sort of a higher level of consciousness, comes from suffering. And the Underground Man seems to be all in on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, we wanted to talk. So we've talked about destruction and chaos, and we've talked about this idea. Are we just animals? Are we predestined to behave certain ways, to just go with our own habits that we're unable to change? And I keep seeing the overlaps with Nietzsche as well here, kind of with these ideas about us being animals. And, a lot of people are very surprised, and you can find this in Twilight of the Idols students, that Nietzsche was really critical of Darwin, actually. He sort of rejected Darwin's ideas and thought that everybody was just kind of flocking to that idea because it was new science, and that it does have problems with it. So Nietzsche and Dostoevsky are taking on a lot of the same types of problems here. And now let's go back to that question. This was the promise of utopia. This was the promise that science is going to solve everything. We're not going to have to work as hard. We're going to have more free time. We're going to cure diseases. We're going to do all these things. So what will people do when they get all this freedom? Are they going to study philosophy? like the Plato's philosopher king, or are they going to, even in Marx, who's writing about the same time, he predicted that once we got society into perfect communism and all these sorts of things, that people could take up art, archery, painting, study philosophy, literature, write. Is this what we see typically when people have free time?
Well, I mean, it would be different, of course, for the underground man, but he does not. He writes. He writes in a self-defeating, very sad, isolated way in his life, but it sound like a complete overlap to today? If we have everything planned out, right? If we have it all, it's all there for us. But I mean, it's kind of what you're getting at, but you used it in the context of the 1900s, or I mean 19th century, 1800s, even 20th. But today too, right? We know about that's what AI is supposed to do for us. We're supposed to alleviate all of this busy work, right? So that we can have time for what? Large question mark. What are we doing instead of the dishes? What are we doing instead of working as bureaucrats in an office because we're automating AIs to do those jobs for us? Is it because we're going to be able to be artists? Is it? Is it really? It seems like we just kind of continuously waste our time doom scrolling or participating in other online, time wasting. Kind of like the underground man does with his overthought and his lack of action in his life. Right,
Hannah, but I would argue that the underground man is at least creating something, and he's leaving us this manuscript here that we can puzzle over and think about. Whereas, think about when we're doom scrolling or the average person is scrolling. It's basically a massive advertising. You're literally serving yourself advertisements. When we watch a movie or something, we say, "Oh my God," or say, Netflix. I was just horrified. I'm an old Star Trek, the original series fan, and when it was on Netflix, there were no commercials in them. And then Paramount, which is the company that made Star Trek, took it back in, and it puts commercials in the episodes. It breaks up the episodes, and I was like, "Oh my God, now there's commercials in here." Like, we complain about it then, but we'll scroll through hundreds of commercials in a setting and look at them all when we're scrolling. That's what we found. Give humans free time. Most of them, I'm guilty of this myself.
We all are, of course.
I've said, in the summer I'm going to get that writing done, or I'm going to have some time off, and most of the time, even before doom scrolling or things like that, I would find all sorts of ridiculous time-wasting activities to engage in.
It all fades into oblivion. If you have nothing tangible, if there's nothing tangible really at the end of the day, in doom scrolling or scrolling on your phone anyway for just looking at algorithm, and it doesn't leave you with any lasting impact if you don't use the knowledge that you gain, right? What are we using our knowledge for?
Right.
The underground man writes, like you said, that's a good point. I of course I agree with you. The underground man leaves us this manuscript, and we should learn from it. We should think over it and evaluate how it applies to our lives and how our actions mirror the underground man and how we can maybe do better, right? And be conscious and not follow that path as much as possible. Right, but it seems kind of concerning though that the phone right now, a lot of our time is just going to something that is for a profit for somebody other than us, and it's not necessarily benefiting us. So
and it's now, many studies are coming out of the dopamine rushes that you get from scrolling. Ironically, I mean, it's kind of crazy because it's not like you're getting anything, but it's doing something. It's creating dopamine, just like drinking alcohol or taking cocaine, or it is releasing the same chemical, dopamine, right? And it's sort of like an opium for the masses in a lot of ways, I would say.
Yeah.
I want to direct us to, because we've talked about suffering and consciousness, and on page 35, right at the end of section 9 in Underground, the underground man is talking about suffering and consciousness. And he says, "I know that in a crystal palace it is even unthinkable Suffering is doubt. It is negation. And what good is a crystal palace in which one can have doubts? And yet I'm certain that man will never renounce real suffering, that is destruction and chaos. Suffering, why? This is the sole cause of consciousness. Though I did declare at the beginning that consciousness, in my opinion, is man's greatest misfortune, still I know that man loves it and will not exchange it for any satisfactions. Consciousness, for example, is infinitely higher than 2 times 2. After 2 times 2, there would, of course, be nothing left, not only to do, but even to learn. Okay? And it's really, consciousness exists on some, he claims here that it even overcomes science. It's beyond that. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is sort of like his idea, like everything's been figured out.
Yeah, that's what figures for mathematics and for empirical data. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. So, is that, do we have to suffer? I was telling you the other day about, I think it's Agent Smith's speech in The Matrix, where he talks about the first crop that they had. So the Matrix is this, everybody's kind of a brain, they're in these vats and they're used by machines to create energy. And so they have to broadcast a world into their minds. So nobody's actually in the world. It's a virtual world. And the first virtual world was a utopia that the machines made for the humans. Everything, they had their crystal palace, right? They had everything they wanted. And the result was mass suicides. And so then they recreated the Matrix, the fake world, to be exactly like the real world, full of suffering and misery, and humans seem to like suffering, right? The sole cause of consciousness, and that goes all the way back to Sophocles there. So let's. How can we end out section 1, Hannah? What would we say?
Well, I think that section 1, underground, raises a lot of questions, and it's pretty dense too. I mean, I think considering the context is helpful. The ideas of the battle between determinism and free will, science versus consciousness, and the downfalls as well as the possible positives of hyperconsciousness and self-awareness. Thinking about all these and how they apply to the underground man, we can ultimately take a lot of relatability. For one, I know that when I read Underground, I find myself exclaiming, "Oh, yes, so true. I absolutely, I do that also."
I was telling you, I've written in the margin in several places, "me," with an exclamation point next to it, and I'm not always proud of it. I'm like, oh my God, like I've totally, in fact, I have OMG written in the margins in places because it strikes to home so many
facepalm places where you don't want to relate to the underground man, because of course you don't, but at the same time in many ways we do. But the underground man, he leaves this and he's stuck, and even at the end of the whole novella we learn he's still going. He's going and he's still writing.
He's still going and he's going to keep writing. We're not going to get to see those notes.
We're not going to see it, but we can learn from it. We can do better. I think we can learn from the underground man, and we can take action.
Yes, and I think that as we talked about earlier, as seductive as the underground man is, and I think that we talked about this, that a lot of people will read this and go, "Oh my God, I'm the underground man. This is so awesome. I'm just going to go in my room and hate everybody and despise everything." And really, you have to swerve around that. I don't think that is ultimately what this text is arguing or proposing, right? That the underground man is somebody who we can learn from a lot.
Absolutely.
And we can identify with, as you just said, Hannah, but ultimately we have to move on from him. We have to go forward.
Yep.
And I'll tell you this, here's a big difference. We've been seeing a lot of similarities between Nietzsche and Dostoevsky here. And I'm going to make a distinction and say Nietzsche and the underground man, Dostoevsky's character here. And what I would say the difference is, although the underground man would claim this, that for Nietzsche it's real, and a lot of people miss this, is that Nietzsche is affirmative. He's always trying to find a positive or a solution, even though people think he's bitter, he's negative, all these kinds of things. He's actually very affirmative. I don't see this in the underground man. I mean, although the underground man seems to believe, what do you think about this? The underground man seems to believe in humans' revolutionary potential, but that it's often misguided. What are your thoughts on that, Hannah?
That he does believe in its potential. Well, he thinks that once humans do revolt, there's always a point to revolution. It's that they're unsatisfied with the current conditions, and so they collectivize and revolt against that system to form a better system, a better reality. And that's where the underground man gets stuck. He thinks, but there you go. There's the rub. Once they find that better reality and they build that said crystal palace or that utopia, they'll just keep devolving, and it's not going to lead to actual improvement for humanity. We're just going to find different means of forming that same destruction and chaos. I mean, does Nietzsche disagree? Does Nietzsche think that? I mean, that's just back to you as well.
Yeah,
right?
I think good question, and I think that Nietzsche would say that we have the potential to rise above this. That you know, and I'm going more with Zarathustra than Twilight now, where he says. It is, and it's really funny, of course, because Nietzsche contradicts himself all the time. But he'll say, and this is Zarathustra, his character, not Nietzsche talking. But he says that it's been a long journey from worm to human for people, and there's still a lot of worm left in you. But you can still rise above. You can still, if you choose to, right? It's not easy, and I don't want to leave us with think about. Humanity is full of revolutionary figures, people who somehow break out. And I'm wondering now, is it harder to break out because of social media, because of AI, because of the clutter of advertising, because of the constant noise that we are subjected to? Are we even more constrained without even knowing it? Then are we living in some sort of a loose matrix now?
I mean, it's always good to speculate. It's good to critique the world around you and think of all these different possibilities. What's negative is if people feel that they actually are neutralized and they have no potential for change. They have no ability to influence. They are just completely sold into. They buy into the algorithm. They're doomed. They have no. There's nothing they can actually do. I hear a lot of people talking like this. They can't make a difference. What is one person going to do?
Right.
However,
Or I think even the worst situation is the people who just don't even know or think about it. The people who really do seem to be in the matrix, like, and maybe, you know, I'm being judgmental here or something, but you see people, for instance, I recently flew back from New York, right? And I was in the airport in Charlotte, and I was getting a burrito in one of the airport restaurants with my son, and there's a woman working in there, and a young woman and attractive, and she just seemed completely resigned to her life. And she said she just found out that she was pregnant with twins, and she was like super poor and was just sort of like, I just hope they're boys because boys are mad easy, and just was like completely resigned to her whole life. And it really disturbed my son, you know, that somebody could just be kind of like just in that. And I'm not bagging on people, you know, who have, it's just, seems like a person without any self-reflection or any sort of like, there's a bigger world out there than this.
The underground man would probably call that person a man of action, right? Just the doer, the person that's kind of being satisfied with your conditions and working within the confines of your current reality and not trying to break out. But at the same time, though, who better is the underground man, though? He doesn't actually change. He doesn't change. We can do it. We can change. I mean, right? I think that's what we should remember is that we have our agency still.
Yeah, and I think that he is challenging us, right? He's challenging us. And I'm just going to go to the end of section 1, and I know we've gone longer than we thought we were going to go, but this is a great conversation.
That always happens.
That always happens, you guys. And since we've been spare on lectures, this one's going to be a little long. And this is not necessarily a lecture, but a discussion. Where he ends section 1 is, and this always cracks me up because, you know, think of somebody you know who talks a big game, and this is another thing is now, especially in our age, everybody's a creator. You know how many people have like digital creators on their profiles or whatever when you go on to their thing, even people or CEO of such and such a company, you know, and they're nothing. But really, he gives us all this. So he's kind of one of these people who gives us all this, and then, what's he going to do with it, right? And what is he says, or why is he doing all this? And his last paragraph on page 41, finally, I'm bored, and I constantly do nothing. So he's one of these people who talks a lot, like those people who say, oh, I'm going to create this giant company, or I've got this idea for a product, or we should do this or that. I mean, people like this, or I've got an idea for a novel or for whatever.
Yeah.
And they talk a lot about it. They go on and on about it, but they never do it, right? And that's kind of his, finally, I'm bored and I constantly do nothing. And writing things down really seems like work. They say work makes a man good and honest. Well, here is a chance, at least. Is that him giving us a little hope, do you think? Or?
I mean, I think we have there's always, that's a choice, right? I mean, we do that. But sometimes, that made me think of, I write stories. We both write. And
right.
That's why I don't like talking about an idea I have until I've actually written it, because it will neutralize me. It's like, okay, I already got it off my chest. I was so excited about this. I was going to write all this. I had this great idea for a short story, and now that I already talked about it, I'm never going to write it. It's wasted, right?
It's totally true. And I think that's the thing, is that people talk about all their ideas. They talk about the website they're going to make. They talk about the story they're going to write. They talk about their idea for a video game or for a new system or anything, and then they don't do it, right? And I think there is something to that you tell about it, you tell all about it, and you sort of kill it. And people are going, whoa, that sounds like such a cool idea.
You should totally write that. You should totally make that website. I'll go there. I'll support you.
When are you gonna,
oh, awesome.
Yeah,
sweet.
when are you going to do it?
Not going to happen.
And I think it does create a sort of like a pressure of expectations.
It does.
Like once you tell people, then suddenly you're like, oh my God. Like,
you got to measure up.
Yes, like this article I'm behind on writing.
Yeah, right. But you're not doomed to, that's not, I don't think you're doomed to that reality. You can choose, you can follow through, you can do things, and it doesn't have to, don't get too lofty with it. That's one thing, that the beautiful and lofty is one thing that the Underground Man criticizes. If you have a goal, start small. Small change is important. Small actions are important. Small acts of resistance are important. These little things matter.
Bursts of creation. Doing something around your house. Do something.
Talking to somebody in your real life. Yeah.
Right. Breaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we should say a few things about apropos of what's now.
Okay, do it all together. All right.